Less than a week ago, Gilbert Arenas went after Giannis Antetokounmpo, saying he wasn't skilled, he never improved, and his overall game is generally not impressive. I thought those takes from Gilbert were the worst Giannis takes I've ever seen. But less than a week later, I was introduced to this guy who is by far the most delusional Giannis hater. And if you don't know this guy, his Twitter username is Ball Don't Stop. He is the pioneer of the tween hezzy splash nonsense, and as we've come to see, people like him have a massive disdain for someone like Giannis, who primarily dominates off physical force. And to give you guys an example of the most delusional Giannis hater, look at this take from him back in 2019. He says Giannis Antetokounmpo is not the better basketball player compared to Zach LaVine. And worst of all, he compares Zach LaVine to Kobe and Michael Jordan. That on its own is an egregious and awful take. And as idiots usually do, this guy doubled and tripled down, saying Bradley Beal, Brandon Ingram, Zach LaVine, Kyrie, Devin Booker, Dame, and Kemba Walker are arguably better players than Giannis. Much like Gilbert Arenas, this bozo is obsessed with skill and flash, and would rather see a guy take 20 dribbles, waste 40 seconds, and throw up a mid-range brick instead of someone like Giannis driving to the basket and getting an easy two and putting you on a poster. And this group of NBA fans who only value skill and finesse, when you listen to them talk, it's word salad and absolute utter nonsense.
From a standpoint of finishing, being aggressive, getting to the cup, throwing it down, getting to the line, making your free throws, your mid-range game, who you are at the elbow, your face-up game, your back-to-the-basket game, your ability to shoot the turnaround jumper over both shoulders, your one-dribble pull-up, your two-dribble pull-up, your pump fakes, getting a guy up in the air, your touch around the basket, your left hand, your ability to pass the ball, all this, that passing it comes real easy to a pure hooper like this.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
And to add even more context, this guy, Ball Don't Stop, thinks Kevin Durant still is the best player in the world and better than Giannis. In the following clips, he's going to say why Giannis, in his eyes, isn't the best player. Get ready and hold on.
With Giannis, it's like, the foundation of his game is still bully ball. It's still freight train. It's still come downhill, right? So can I look at that and call him the best basketball player in the world? No, but he is the most dominant and unstoppable force. When you talk about best basketball player in the world, I think of guys like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. I think of LeBron James. I think of guys like Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant.
Now, stopping that clip right there, his overall premise off the bat is flawed. As when he says best basketball players, the guys he's talking about are either one, retired, or two, out of their prime. As LeBron at this point, he's 37, Kawhi, he's injured, Kobe and MJ both retired, and Kevin Durant hasn't won a playoff series in 3 years. If you want to compare Giannis at this point to prime LeBron, prime Jordan, or prime Kobe, yes, those guys are better. But that's not the argument fans are making. We're talking about Giannis in the moment right now being the best player. And one more thing I do have to ask, who started gatekeeping the term of being the best overall player? Being the best player does not mean the most skilled, the most dominant, or even the most talented. The best player is the best player regardless of skill set or what you view as good basketball. And one thing you'll notice with these guys, when talking about the best player, one thing they really bring up is the defensive end of the court, as defense quite literally is 50% of the game. And looking at Giannis compared to the best players in the world, most of them aren't elite defenders and elite players on both ends. That is one sole factor that is heavily in Giannis' favor.
The game is always going to be about a bucket. Offense is by far the most important thing in basketball, even today. But, Giannis is defensively, what he does defensively puts him obviously at the top of this group. But, in terms of offensive brilliance, I don't see that mastery of the game in terms of his skill level. He's not carving up a defense with his shot making. It's not like he's, incredibly polished offensively, or his footwork is, so impeccable, or, he's like this mid-range assassin.
Once again, the overall premise that the most skilled player equals the best player, it's flawed on so many levels. As looking at purely offensive skill of someone like Dame or Kyrie compared to Giannis, yes, those players offensively, skill-wise, are much better than Giannis. But when talking about who's the better overall player, even better offensive player, that is indeed Giannis Antetokounmpo. And let's take 4 steps back and compare both Giannis versus Kevin Durant. Purely being objective looking at both these players, they're both phenomenal and the cream of the crop of NBA talent. But looking at Giannis, he averages more points, more rebounds, more assists, shoots better from the field, and is a top 3 defender in the NBA, compared to Kevin Durant, who defensively isn't even top 50. If you think footwork, mid-range jump shots, and fadeaways are more important than defense, that's an indictment on you and not Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I want to be very clear with you guys, not every NBA player is a Kobe, an MJ, or LeBron James. Those guys' skill level on offense and defense is as high as it gets. And looking across the NBA landscape, you have superstars like Jokic, Luka, Dame, Joel Embiid. All these guys are elite talents, but they do it in completely different ways. That's why basketball is so unique. You have all these top 10 players who get it done in a variety of ways. And someone being more skilled, having better handles, by default doesn't make them the better player.
There's certain things you could do to take him out of a game. You could still sag, and it's going to come down to, is he going to make those shots? You could still at times, and Boston, Boston did a good job.
Now, that was the end of the video clip, but what he was saying right there is that Giannis versus Boston, he was contained and the defense did a very good job. Now, Giannis in this series, he averaged 34 points, 15 boards, 7 assists on 46% shooting, and without Chris Middleton, took this team to a Game 7. Compare those numbers to Kevin Durant, who also versus Boston only averaged 26 points on 39% shooting while getting swept in the first round. That is Kevin Durant, the quote-unquote pure hooper who has tons of skill, compared to Giannis, the guy who runs and dunks and has absolutely no skill on the court. If his way of looking at basketball was correct, Giannis versus Boston should have been cooked, and KD versus the Celtics should have averaged 40. And you know, if Giannis in the first round only averaged 26 on sub-40 shooting and got swept, this guy would have been all over him, and that loss would have been an indictment on his entire career. And you guys know when you're losing an argument, it's best to admit defeat and finally give up. But for Ball Don't Stop, a pure hooper, he does not do that. As in the following tweets, bringing up skill and finesse, he talks about Shaq being the best player in the world. And as you could imagine, he also thinks Shaq was never the best player in the NBA, saying Kobe, T-Mac, Iverson, and Garnett were quote-unquote more dynamic players. Looking at Allen Iverson and T-Mac, those two players only played one end of the court. And looking at someone like KG, he was a beast and dominant player, but it wasn't until 04 he reached his true peak. And for Kobe, I hate to say it, but looking at his early career, he was second fiddle to Shaq himself. And looking at 2000 Shaq, peak Shaquille O'Neal is one of the greatest seasons of all time, as Shaq averaged 29.7 points, the most in the NBA, 13.6 boards, the second most, 3.8 assists, 3.0 blocks, that was third in the NBA, on 57% shooting, the highest in the league. If you say Shaq from 2000 to 02 wasn't the best player in the world, you're smoking crack. And looking at 2000, if you don't think he was the best player, right now at this moment, call a doctor and get some help. Now, for Ball Don't Stop being a pure hooper, valuing skill, when he breaks the game down, he does it in a pure and fair way. As looking at Giannis and what he can't do, Ball Don't Stop has a few things. Number 1 being post scoring, number 2 being mid-range scoring, 3-point shooting, passing, closing ability, and free throw shooting. Now, for some of those categories, I disagree, but let's move past that. My overall point looking at this list, if you're grading a player like this, you're comparing Giannis to absolute perfection. And once again, for Giannis' flaws, you're only looking at offense. But for someone like Kevin Durant, James Harden, you won't dare look at the defensive end of the court, as if you did that, you would clearly realize Giannis is the better overall player. Is Kevin Durant an elite on-ball defender? No. Is he an elite off-ball defender? No. Is he an elite rim protector? No. Does he have elite leadership? No. Does he have elite durability? Also no. And does he have championships without Steph Curry? Once again, a fat no. If you take any NBA player, from Michael Jordan to Wilt Chamberlain, and examine their games, you're going to find some flaws you can dissect. Deep down, this guy knows Giannis is an elite player and the best in the game. And why he won't admit it is because Giannis destroys his narrative and his whole line of thinking. So that right there is my last overall point, and that is the end of the video. I hope it wasn't too long, and I hope these takes weren't too egregious. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time.